It's not been a great start to 2025 for the men's and women's senior sides. The men have lost both T20s in India so far. The women are 12-0 down in the Ashes in Australia. They need to avoid defeat in the test match at the MCG if they're to avoid a series whitewash. We'll assess both sides, both series. We'll also talk about the Big Bash in Australia as the final this morning. Hobart Hurricanes winning it against the Sydney Thunder, but we'll look at the impact IPL sides are having, or IPL owners rather, are having on franchise leagues around the world. But Ebony Rainford, Brent and Michael Vaughan are with us. That was absolutely, I mean, I know we get used to big hitting and great batting and so on and so forth, Ebony, but that was absolutely gobsmacking this morning.
What was that? The BBL. Sorry. Yeah. Of course. Look, this is what you live for, isn't it? To be able to come out to a big tournament, and it's more important as well when you've got a side that hasn't won the tournament. Yeah. You stand up under pressure, and you come out and you hit an absolute blinder. So well done to him. I haven't seen too much of him in the past, to be honest. And then you just see striking like that. So impressive. Good way to bring through the title for the Hurricanes. And just shows the excitement of the tournament.
Mitch Owen, who hit 108 off just 42 balls, who played in the Lancashire League last year. So we'll talk to a member of the club who he played for. But honestly, Michael, I was sitting at home on my own and standing up and applauding him like I was in the crowd. It actually took the breath away watching him.
Yeah, it was a special innings. I mean, it's been a fantastic Big Bash. It really has kind of grabbed the Aussies' attention like it did a few years ago with huge crowds, and it was a fitting finale with an incredible innings. That's his second 100 in the Big Bash, and I think he's going to be pretty sought after. I mean, you only have to have a couple of innings these days, and your price tag seems to go up rather quickly. So he's timed that innings. I mean, he's not in the IPL yet, but he's the kind of player that if a team
would you
loses,
expect that? Would you expect someone? But they have to lose someone before they can bring someone in.
Yeah. I think he's timed his innings quite nicely, and when you've got Ricky Ponting on commentary and he's the chief coach of one of the IPL teams and he's the advisor for the Hobart Hurricanes, I would say that he might get a little gig in India eventually.
So we will talk more about Mitch Owen, we'll talk more about the Big Bash, and we'll talk about a little bit more about franchise cricket as well. A little bit later on. But we're going to start with the England women, who've lost all 6 white ball matches in the Ashes. They've got the test match left in Melbourne, starts in the early hours of Thursday morning. Need to avoid defeat in that to avoid a whitewash. From Melbourne, England ODI and Test opener Tammy Beaumont joins us. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you're a friend of the show, Tammy, but these are very difficult circumstances. I would have probably understood it if you hadn't joined us. Morale must be very low.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really tough tour. I think no one expected it to go the way it has. And at the minute, the Aussies are absolutely flying, and we've got to find something in the tank to avoid whitewash, which absolutely none of us want.
How hard do you think it's going to be to find something in the tank?
I think, to be honest, we're up against it, really. We're up against a team that are absolutely flying. They're working on all cylinders, and once a team like that's got momentum and got something to play for, it's really, really tough to come up against it. But, playing in whites, playing at the MCG is, firstly, playing at the MCG is an absolute novelty, but also the chance to get whites on is always a real X factor for us. So I think that's going to inspire the girls. We've got to take it as a one-off test match, and a lot of us take pride in what we stand for as trying to get more test cricket. So we're going to have to find a way to play to justify kind of having more and more test cricket. So for me, that's what I'm trying to get up for is playing a test match. I grew up watching the likes of Michael Vaughan win the 2005 Ashes, dreaming of playing in one. And although it's not gone the way we want, we've got to get up for it and show what we're about.
Hey Tammy, it's Ebony here. Been watching on the sofa in the early mornings, you guys. Big question, I guess, is I've noticed the spin has been a challenge through the white ball staff, averaging 13, and obviously they've got some incredible spinners, Alana King, Georgia Wareham, etc., and Ash Gardner when she was playing. So how do you think in the test match, particularly when it's going to be a bit more of a tougher challenge, are you guys going to try and handle that threat?
Yeah, they've bowled exceptionally well. I think Alana King in particular has put some serious revs on the ball and spun it every single game. So it's going to be a challenge. I think for me, it's about backing my defence and then knowing really clearly what my attacking options are. And at some point, you can't just let the bowlers bowl. We're going to have to put something back on them. They've pretty much had it on a penny in some of the games. So we're going to have to make them miss a lot more and put the pressure back on them somehow.
You talked about Michael in 2005. Michael, can I take you back to sort of 2002-03 and being down under and facing the prospect of a whitewash? And what, because you were 4-0 down, weren't you, in 2002-03? And what, as I said to Tammy, finding yourself in what is in essence a spin and trying to just grab onto anything to save some face, really.
Yeah, I mean, I always look back at that last game in 2-2-3, and we actually won that game in Sydney. And I personally took a huge amount from that game because, the Australians were pretty good. They had a world-class team, and to just beat them on one occasion in their own backyard, actually sent a huge amount of confidence through me going forward into 2005 that there are 11 human beings, and if you get it right and you play a brand of cricket that's very aggressive, and I think to play against quality teams, you can't just sit back and wait. You have to go and get on the front foot and try and put them under pressure, and that's what we did in Sydney in 2003. And I'm not saying it's the reason why we went on and won the Ashes in 2005, but it certainly gave me a belief that you can beat anyone on a given week. If you get everything right, you play with the right mentality. And that's what I'd ask you, Tammy. I mean, it has been a disappointing tour, but is there a week that you can have this week in Melbourne that can, it's not going to put everything right that's gone wrong, but can you take so much from a test match victory at the MCG that we back home in the UK can go, okay, the future does look like there's a little bit of brightness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to believe. I think this England team never goes into a game feeling like if we don't perform the way we know we can't beat anyone. And the Aussies have played exceptionally well and beaten us 6 times, but we came into this full of belief. Not a lot has changed. Yes, the results. Yes, maybe the performances haven't been as good as they have been, but the preparation and the skills we've got are certainly there. And, you go back to the last Ashes and we managed to draw from a pretty unbelievable situation being 8-0 down. So we have to believe we can take them on. And, there's a lot of people with a lot of good history in test matches against the Aussies. So just need a few of them to show up for a few days.
Well, talking about that, Tammy, Kate Cross is obviously had challenges with the injury. I know she's travelled with you guys. I've seen her in the net. So any news or anything you can say about her development? Are we going to see her in the test if she's fit?
Yeah, I really hope so. I've been in Melbourne with her all week training and with Ree McDonald-Gay as well. And she's got through the overs. She's been in the field. I think she's raring to go. And yeah, it's tough for her coming in at this stage, having not played at all yet. But I think she'd be desperate to play in this game this week.
When you talk about being aggressive, though, Michael, what does that mean, and how quickly can you be aggressive? I mean, can you just flick a switch and go, we're going to be aggressive in this test match? Or is it all part of preparation and build-up? That's what I'm trying to work out.
Oh, yeah, you need to start in your preparation and your build-up, but fundamentally, it's about every individual realising there's an opportunity to go and do something in a given test match. And, the aggressive kind of motion in terms of what I talk about is all in the mind. It's that ultimate belief that you've got to wake up backing yourself because... Tammy, you'll have had so many meetings over the course of the last few weeks. You'd have all been talking about what's gone wrong. Ultimately, it's about every individual arriving on Thursday at the MCG, believing in themselves. And there's not a coach that can say anything to you that will put you in that mindset. All the players have delivered some magic in the past. And, I always think in a tour that's not gone so well and when you're all looking inwardly and you're always kind of looking for what's gone wrong on the finger of why it's not been a great tour. There is always that possibility that something special can happen. And playing a test match at the MCG, it'll be a spectacular occasion. I was only in Australia a couple of weeks ago and they were saying there's going to be 25,000, 30,000 people rocking up. There's going to be DJs, music blaring at night. It's going to be a great occasion. And if that's not enough motivation, Tam, for you all to kind of go and inspire to do something as a collective, but more so I think at this stage I always think for teams to get back on track Chappers. It's about the individuals. It's about individuals sticking the hand up and going, I'm going to be that player that gets 100. I'm going to be that player. Kate Cross, can she get a 5 for at the MCG? If someone take a flying catch, a run out, just something that triggers a little bit of positivity. So it comes down to the individuals. As much as we talk about the collective and the team winning, if individuals can arrive at the MCG and produce some magic, England can win a test match.
Do you agree, Tammy?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm someone that plays my best when I try and get in the battle. So yeah, certainly trying to get myself up for it and kind of pick your battle with who you want to engage with and really get into that, and everything else kind of fades away. And we've got a lot of other players that play the same way. So hopefully, if a few of us can really get into it, we can hopefully bring everyone else along with us.
When you were watching the T20s, Tammy, when you watched Australia, what were you seeing? And when you were watching your teammates, what were you seeing?
Oh, I think Australia just looked like a team that's in complete control. They've got match winners the whole way through. They've got quite clear plans and what they want to do. And, I think they keep it really simple, actually, and they just execute over and over again. And that's how they apply pressure. What I actually was really happy with how the likes of Danni Wyatt and Sophia Dunkley really took the bowlers on in a couple of games, and particularly Dunks has worked so hard during the ODIs when she wasn't playing to come in and kind of show the way. I think there's signs for me that we can definitely beat this team. And the way Heather fought at Canberra, 18 off 5 balls was going to be tough, but she had that look in her eye where you can't write her off. So for me, there was some signs that, we were fighting hard. We just maybe didn't win those key moments at the time. And it's unfortunate. And every time you get knocked down, it's even harder to get back up. But there's certainly people in the team that keep trying to get back up every game.
Sammy, I was just going to say, my advice when you're up against it is you've got to be willing to take risks. And I would advise the team to actually be willing to take risks at the MCG. And a little risk that I would take, and I watched a lot of the white ball stuff, I went to a couple of the games, was someone like Sophie Ecclestone. She's the #1 bowler in the world. Just try and bowl her early. Bring her onto the tap. I watched the first 2 one-day games. She came on, I think, on the 18th and the 19th over, and I was... What hair I have left on my head. I was and there's not a great deal.
I thought all of that had been going quite well, hadn't it?
Well, it has, and,
right.
it is my own these days. I used to have a squirrel that used to kind of get planted on my head, but this is my own. I was crying out, Tams, for Sophie to come on early. She's the best bowler in the world for a reason, and I would just say to all of you, take risks. And if it is a risk by putting Sophie Ecclestone on early on, with the fielder and saying to the Australians, go on, try and whack me over the top, because you know exactly what they're going to try and do. They will try and hit Sophie over the top, which might bring 1 or 2 opportunities. So my advice to you all this week would be to go and take a few risks. Go and have a right good pop at the Aussies. You know what Australia are like. They like to own their own space. They're full of, I can't say it on air, but you know what they're full of. And you've got to try and get into their space and just ask them a few questions that might just surprise them just every now and again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Did you feel, Ebony, when you were, obviously you were on the sofa doing it for telly with your fancy iPad and everything. So did you, no, it was really good. Did you, the intensity levels felt different, didn't they? And even things like, Beth Mooney's innings in the final T20, everyone was turned into, it felt watching as if everyone was turned into a 2. Even when she was in the 70s and 80s and sweat pouring, and you'd have thought she was knackered, and she knew that she had a wicket-keeping shift to do as well, and all of that, the intensity felt like at another level.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think not only players like that who are experienced continuing to deliver, there are key moments in games where England could have dominated. There was one where they had Australia 59 for 4, and Australia ended up 300 with Ash Gardner coming out to smash 100. Now, that's the sort of time when a lot of teams might crumble and the batting collapse happens. Australia could have been bowled out for 100, who knows, 120. But they have players like an Ash Gardner or like a Beth Mooney who will come into those situations, and that intensity and that ruthlessness to come out and dominate is so important. And then it's like you say, with players like Beth Mooney, those small margins, picking up the 2s and just wearing the players down. I just feel that everything they did, you compared England's opening bowlers, they were wides and balls kind of loose down the leg side, where you look at Kim Garth and Megan Schutt, and every time they land the ball, it was landing on almost on a string. So the Australians have looked really sharp in this tournament. England's done some good parts. That they got Australia bowled out for 180 in one game, and you felt that they might have done it there, and then that didn't quite manifest. Sophia Dunkley comes out and has a really good sprightly innings, and you think, right, they're taking it to the Australians. So it's not that England haven't competed. I think England have showed, but the challenge for me, it's been the consistency, and then, like you say, that intensity and that ruthlessness has been missing. So it's been frustrating, and maybe the test might be an opportunity where players can take a bit more time. Actually, you're not rushed to get into your innings, you're not rushed with the ball, so you can just slow things down and try and really focus on the basics, like Michael said, get into the moment, and really kind of enjoy it. So I hope so. I feel as well, for England now, it's a new start of an era, because this kind of phase was looking at the T20 World Cup, and that didn't quite go to plan, and then the Ashes, that's not gone to plan. So then you start looking at the next cycle, 50 over World Cup, you've got T20 World Cup, and you need a new brand of cricket. And so I think for England now, it's about setting that tone, looking forward, and getting excited for what's to come.
How can England get to their intensity, Tammy?
I think we've been trying to improve our intensity and really work on our physicality, and that takes time. And when you're playing year round, there's very few training blocks where you can really push that. And obviously we've actually got February, March, April before the cricket season to really get stuck into that kind of thing and get home and work hard at the kind of movement in the field and those types of things. So certainly on the radar, that is something we are trying to push. I think Australia are an exceptional cricket team. They have no one with an arm you can take on, no one that's kind of lacking in the field. And that just kind of shows how much depth they've got and how good they are. But it's certainly something we've identified that we'd love to get better at.
And just following on from Ebony's point, and then we'll let you go, do you feel like this is the end of a cycle, the start of a new cycle?
We'll have to kind of wait and see. The thing is, the 50 over World Cup's only in 7-8 months' time, in September, October. So, there isn't that much time to get things right. And, even though we've been well beaten, before that we've not lost a 50 over series for quite some time. So we've obviously been doing a lot of good stuff. We just haven't done it this month, and we can't just completely rip it up and start again. We've got to get back and dust ourselves down, ask the important questions, improve quickly. And I think there's only 6 50 over games before that World Cup for us. So, we're going to have to learn quickly and move on.
So if there was a team meeting tomorrow and you were asked to stand up first to put an important question to the group, what would it be? I think for me it would be, it's been a tough tour, but let's find that one thing you want to play for. So for me it would be play for that 10-year-old girl that was watching Test match cricket, desperate to play. Find something that's going to motivate you to fight for 4 days for every single over. And whatever that is, whether it's the 15 girls around us that you want to fight for, then you go for it, and we commit to that, and we don't give an inch. Tammy, thank you very much for coming on this evening in difficult circumstances. I appreciate it. See you soon.
See you guys.
Thank you. Tammy Beaumont with us. What would be the biggest question that you were asked if you were in a team meeting at the end of this tour?
That's a really good question, because I think the frustration with this tour, and sorry, I'm going to go around the houses to your question.
That's all right.
I think the frustration with this tour is it was in every area. It felt like it didn't quite click. So for me, the fielding had too many drop catches, fumbles. The batting, not enough conversions, and really struggling to play the spins. England only averaged 13 against a spin, which is pretty poor compared to Australia, who were averaging 30. And then with the ball, it was like every time the openers would start or someone got a new ball, there were plenty of wides in the new. So it was just like everything was off. And for me, I guess the question was like about handling pressure. I think it was more that this is a great team, by the way. So England are a great team. If you look at how well England perform across all the bilateral series, England pretty much won everything over the last few periods.
England aren't a great team. You can't say England are a great team. They've won one trophy in 8 years. They're not a great team.
But you think about it, across
great
series
teams lift
against
trophies.
everyone, it's the T20 World Cup semi they mess up, and then Australia. But everything else, they're pretty much doing okay. They've
won one trophy in 8 years, Ebbs. They're not a great team.
You don't think they're
not
they're
a
in
great
the 1,
team.
2, 3?
Australia are a great team.
Okay, fair.
That is a great cricket team, and that is the benchmark for all teams around the world to try and follow. And it's hard to follow because they're that good. They've got depth. You know, Elisa Healy's not been playing in the T20s, but they've got someone else to nip in. They've got a brilliant squad. They are the benchmark for the women's game. And you could argue, actually, that they're the benchmark for the game. They've been the best cricket team across the last 15 years. You know, and that's both in men's and women's. They've won everything, and they missed out on the T20 World Cup. That was a great shock to everybody that they didn't win the T20 World Cup. But they are a great team because they've got... Just throw it back to
you, because if you were taking over as coach, say, of this England side, you're not taking a side that's like number 4 or 5 in the rankings. You're taking a team that pretty much beats everybody but Australia. So my point there is not saying that they're as great as Australia and they're consistent. What I'm saying is you're not taking a team who are bottom of the pile and have got years of work. They've got talent that competes. You've got talent that is going for high prices in WPLs and BBLs and hundreds.
So we've got to be honest, you know, and in English cricket now, the women's team, if you look at the last 5 years, you know, have they become a better fielding team in 5 years? Are the players that are arriving into the team getting better? You know, are they a more dynamic batting team than they were 5 years ago? Is the bowling more consistent than it was 5 years ago? Are they more agile than they were 5 years ago? The answer to those questions, if we're honest and we all look ourselves in the mirror, is possibly no. And I think the game in this country needs to go why, because the infrastructure is magnificent. You know, the pathway program. You know, the coaches that help all the different teams. The tiers now within the system. We have an incredible system in the UK for producing cricketers, and over the last few years I've watched a lot of the cricket, you know, and I've just been in Australia watching a magnificent Australian side, and they are high class, but I was really disappointed by the basics of the game. And some of the basics of the game, you know, fielding, and I'm no person to talk about fielding, I drop many, but let's be honest, the basics of the game in the T20 World Cup and now in the Ashes series, catching the ball, England aren't good enough. You know, just basic things like, you know, the tactical awareness. You know, I remember Amy Jones batting at the Junction Oval. It was the last ball of the over. It was a free hit, and she didn't take a single. I know it's probably not the difference between the winning and the loss, but you kind of look at the cricket smartness of the team. Has the team got smart than it was 5 years ago? I would say possibly not. And these are the questions that we have to be honest. If England are going to go and match Australia in a few years' time, and this week could be the trigger for that to happen, they go and win a test match at the MCG, fantastic. But if they want to be like the Australian side, and by the way, it's nothing to do with a Coogee to Bondi walk. It's nothing to do with getting in the sea.
That was a shocker of a comment.
That's not happening. Okay, so let's just start to be real and understand that for us to be that team in a few years' time, things have to start differently over here in the UK in terms of development and getting our players to play that little bit better.
It's the that system discussion is also quite an interesting point, because I wonder, Ebony, whether the system gets players to a certain level, as in to being cricketers, but then how far does it then turn them into the intense, hard-edged competitors that this Australian team are? And I read really interesting. I've read a really interesting in one of the papers there, which is like, you know, people keep going on about the 100 and this, that, and the other. It's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks for the women out of the whole year. So what else is there within the system that can give them the hard-edged intensity that we see from the Aussies?
Yeah, look, I think you've hit the money on the head, because I would have said 5 years ago, the challenge would have been that Australia had a domestic structure which was paying women, they were building the base, and they were miles ahead. But you look 5 years later, and England now have a system with counties go under county structures, pay, like you say, 100 players are playing in global tournaments. The domestic infrastructure is there, and it has produced new talent. Players like Maya Bouchier have got more exposure, Alice Capsey, many of talent have come through. But I think you're right, that it's not so much is the talent there. I think if you look down the team sheets, there's plenty of talent in the England team, but that conversion to the edge, and it's a weird thing to say, because I think the England girls are like a nice bunch of girls. And what I mean by that, you interview them when you go around the world, and they're really pleasant to you all the time. They're very helpful. Someone like Beth Mooney, if she can give you a sticky interview, they're quite like, sometimes they don't mind being a little bit abrasive. And that way, I saw Grace Harris when there was a DLS where the game was rained off and they were interviewing her. She was like, oh, well, unlucky England, so what? And like, you could just see they don't mind ruffling feathers. They don't mind being difficult. And so I think that mindset translates on the field. They don't mind ruffling feathers at all. And England have just struggled to find that. The only edge I saw of that was when Sophie Ecclestone played a little cheeky game. She threw one down the leg to Beth Mooney, who was running down. It was a wide. And she didn't mind having a bit of an edge and send it almost like a mini send-off. But other than that, you didn't feel that England were in Australia's faces. So I don't know how we bring that in. I think especially to a women's environment, which is different to a men's culture. How do we get that kind of edge that makes them a little bit prickly and don't mind being in your face on the field, not off the field, but on the field?
Can I ask? So Heather Knight will be under pressure. Any Ashes captain that you don't bring the urn back and you don't have success, and you're on the back of potentially a whitewash. But I look at the team, Ebbs, and I think, okay, where are the leaders? If Heather's not the captain, who can be the captain? And any sports team, when you look at really good sporting teams, and it doesn't matter if it's the women's team, the men's team, you generally, when you've got a good team, you can look around the team and go, okay, if that person's not the captain, well, you could give it to X or you could give it to Y. I look at this England women's team and go, who could be the captain?
Yeah, I think there hasn't been enough of a pipeline development. Some examples would be Charlie Dean is a young player who many think of. She captained in the London Spirit when Heather Knight wasn't there for a year and started to show promise. And then Heather Knight comes back in, there is an opportunity for her. And so she's now stifled as a potential developing leader. Amy Jones has done 7 games, a few ODIs and a few T20s. But we haven't seen her really grow and develop that talent. Tammy Beaumont would be potentially leader, but doesn't play all 3 formats. And then Nat Sciver-Brunt, who is vice-captain, I think it would be quite a big load to put on arguably the best all-round player. So you're right. I don't think that pipeline has been developed. Heather Knight's going to be under pressure. And it will be, first of all, I don't know where a hunger will sit after a tournament like this. I mean, you might know as a captain coming off the back of something like this, you have to dig deep to find out, do I want to go again for the 50 over the T20 as the leader? I'm sure she'll say yes because there's a home T20 World Cup. But that's the first question. Then the management have to ask internally with the culture, is she the right person to drive that forward? And I don't know the answer. I think there's going to have to be a tough wash-up after this. The test will give us an indication of maybe some of that hunger from her and the side. But you're right, leadership is a big issue, I think, in this side. And there hasn't been a pipeline developed.
Chappers, I think there was a review before even 2006 when we went down there and we got beat 5-0 and suddenly there was a Schofield report.
Oh, yes, God.
I'm pretty sure, Chappers, there was another report in the 90s on the men's team that got hammered in Australia. Yeah. I mean, are we at a stage where, a report or an investigation needs to go on into the depth of the women's game just to find out why? I mean, it might just be that Australia are just magnificent and they're just too good. You do sometimes come up against sporting teams, but it's those basics of the game that I worry about. Real basics of cricket smartness, agility in the field, and catching. They're 3 things really that... Fielding is an attitude. It really is an attitude, and you can get better at fielding by just repetition and training and just having that attitude to want to be out there and field. They're the kind of disciplines that I look at the team and think, they're not to the standard, and they're not even to. You mentioned that the top 4 teams in the world, and England certainly are in that. I don't think they field like a top 4 team in the world. They're below those standards in terms of the fielding, and that's something that they have to get right quickly.
Yeah. I think there's 2 things to that, by the way. First, I think you're right in terms of there needs to be an in-depth review, and the other side, I would be interested to see how do we strategize to be better than Australia. I don't think we want to be competing and up with the Aussies. Like, how can we shift world cricket? And the reason why is because England have so much investment compared to many other nations. England and Australia have now significant, the salaries have gone up, many, equal match fees, 100 salaries. The girls are now well resourced, the environment is well resourced, the counties have plenty of cash now to help develop that. So therefore, the next strategy for me is not just kind of competing in the next strategy. How does England dominate world cricket? And that is the report I would like to see. It's like looking forward to recreate a new style of women's cricket. This should be the brand that we get excited for. This is where women's cricket went from too.
Will that come with teams? Will that change at all with teams sort of becoming part of their counties? Now, does even that change if it's Lancashire, Surrey, or Nottinghamshire, against Hampshire or whatever? Does that change the intensity at all, rather than it being, blaze against lightning?
Yeah, look, I was always an advocate for both existing under the county brand. And I've got a decent amount of experience from when I was director of women's cricket at Surrey, where integrating the men and women's, you get more information passed down. So you'll have Alec Stewart, who was at the top for a while, starts to filter in information at that time to people like Richard Bedbrook and those who were leading the side. The infrastructure, the way things train, there's kind of like a model and a formula for how things are done. I'm not saying the women's have to mimic it, but there is a standard and way things are done that really help to elevate that structure. So for me, it will make a difference, and they will be training side by side. Sometimes they'll be in the gym watching the men who have had just a history of more time as professional sports people that can help accelerate the women's game. So I think this is the best move. It might take a little bit of time, but it also might, I used to find as well, I was on the Surrey Academy growing up, and when I had to face someone like Stuart Meeker at that time, or someone like that who's running in it with a bit quicker, or a spinner who was ragging it more than the girls did, it forced me to try and improve my game. So sometimes there might be training opportunities that help the girls to get that level of handling pressure. So it's a good move, and it could make a massive impact.
Ebbs, can I ask you about Sophie Ecclestone? Clearly a fantastic bowler, number one in the world. Is she challenged enough?
That's a good question. That is a good question. Because in a team like England, where I suppose you're just so good, and she is just so good, I don't know. Like, interestingly for me, I would like to see her do, like you said about changing things up, I'd like to see her open in power plays more, for example. They went to Lindsay Smith, or they might go to even a captaincy towards the end of the power play. I wouldn't mind seeing her just challenge herself, like you say. She knows her role very well, and she does it very well. She sort of comes in, that middle order, screws things down, usually takes wickets, and then applies pressure, helps to apply pressure at the other end. But maybe there is an opportunity for that, and sometimes that can get lost when things like this are happening. How do you get those players to step up another notch? And that might be culture, that might be getting the team, that might be leading from her. And that's maybe a question I'd ask you, actually, because this is one thing I've said about this whole series, is that there were moments when England could have won. So you take them, they had them 59 for 4. They've had them on the ropes in 2 or 3 games. And the senior players who've been around for many coaches, and people were sort of saying, is it the management, is it this, is it the culture? I was like, they were on 30 and 40. And I felt those senior players should take accountability, who've been around for so long, to convert that to a 70 or 80. And the back and forth question for me to you, Michael, is people always sort of talk about management and culture, but I think the best players I've ever seen take complete ownership of their game and drive it.
No, I totally agree, and I'll give you an example. So I was at the Junction Oval for that one-day game when England couldn't chase down the 180, and I think it was the 19th over that Sophie bowled. And I was watching with Henry Morango. After about 6 overs, we both looked, I said, Sophie has to bowl. This is going to spin. It was dry. Elisa Healy came out and played beautifully. She got to 29 quickly, then she got out. And it took till the 90 there. I think they were on 82 by the time that Sophie came onto bowl. She got a wicket with her first, about a second ball. It was a sweep shot, LBW. And they were bowled out for 180. And I look back to that game, and if Sophie had grabbed the ball, and someone like Freddie Flintoff, for instance, in 2005, I didn't need to tell him when he was bowling. Fred would come to me and said, I'm getting the ball. That's what I would say to Sophie. She's that good. She's the number one bowler in the world. Are you going to the skipper and saying, I will do the damage. Give me the ball. Let me create a field. Let me try and just risk 1 or 2 things. I know what they're going to do. The Aussies aren't going to just pat it back. They're going to try and dance down and hit a few over the top. But I'm better and good enough to try and outfox them. Now, is she that kind of character that would go to Heather and say, look, Heather, I know your tactics might be X and Y, but I'm taking control of this situation. I'm the best bowler in the world. And I'm not too sure whether she's done that. And that's what I would be saying to someone like Sophie Ecclestone. Be brave enough to trust your ability to challenge this great Australian side, because if you just sit back and you wait, you're going to get hammered. Australia are in both men's and women's cricket, They are the past masters of seeing an opportunity of weakness. And I think England over the last few weeks have just shown a little bit too much in terms of tibbiness, which have allowed the Australians to go, okay, that's the way you're going to play your cricket. We'll just murder you.
Is there an issue with criticism as well? Do we all think? And I'm looking at that in a full 360 way, in the sense of criticism done the right way can improve people. Well, in whatever walk of life it is, not personal, but constructive criticism. Is there an issue with maybe players not used to constructive criticism, partly because they haven't needed it to really get to where they are, because there hasn't necessarily been the wider pool of players that they've had to compete against, and maybe an issue with constructive criticism coming from people like all of us, because quite frankly, for a lot of people and broadcasters, particularly male ones, Ebony, I think you'd have to say, there is a fear in criticising on that side of things, because of the reaction you may get when actually all you're trying to be constructive.
Yeah, look, there's a
it's a delicate subject, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that one of the key things came out obviously with Sophie Ecclestone reviewing an interview with Hartley, and I think that might have stemmed back to Alex's comments about her fitness from the T20 World Cup, is from what I was understanding. And I think there's a few things, specifically with women's sport. It still applies to men, but specifically is I think there is a fear if you talk about fitness for females in sport that it can knock on because of body image issues, because of mental health, because of some of the other side effects that go on with females generally in and out of sport. I think there's a fear of criticising anything about athletic performance or image or anything like that to ruffle the girls in any shape or form. But equally now the players have moved into a new era where that criticism is part of what is happening. People are going to be looking at how agile you move, how athletic you're looking compared to Aussies. And Jonathan Lewis came out himself and said they look stronger, more powerful, more, he kind of listed off quite a few things which didn't come out as a great quote, to be honest, saying that the Aussies were higher. So that criticism is hard. The thing I would like to know more, and it's really hard as a broadcaster to never know this, but as a player, I've been in the team that we won 2009 World Cup, T20 50 over Ashes. That team came into when were getting hammered, and all these teams were beating us and we were behind. And the conversations in the dressing room in that winning team to the team that were getting hammered was so different, and it became much more honest, more transparent. We would tackle issues really hard, and that's the one thing I would love to know in this series is that internal criticism coming hard enough in the dressing room from the players, from the management, to focus on the right things, or is everybody sort of being a bit nicey and maybe not really asking the hard questions? And for England to accelerate, I think they need to either ask hard questions or be able to handle harsh things that might come in from the outside world. So I don't know where that is, but I think there are underlying issues of why we don't go too hard. But actually, to progress and to be at the best, you really have to step it up.
Internally, they need to have those honest conversations, Michael. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere.
The reality surely would kick in now that they've gone to Australia, and at times they've been embarrassed. At times they've competed. There's been 2 or 3 situations that you kind of thought, oh, come on, this is the moment. But I've been there in Australia with men's teams where you have those moments and you're just not good enough to kind of win those key battles, and that's been the difference over the last few weeks. The fact, chappers, this is how far the game's moved on. Is we've done 40 minutes of the show on the women's team. We wouldn't have done that 10 years ago, and that's the new world that they're in now, that we're all enjoying watching them play cricket. The women's game has moved on so much over the last few years for the better. It's been fantastic. But with that, and with the wages going up and the more professionalism within the game, becomes this. They've got to get used to the fact that there's more people watching them now. There's more people excited watching all the players go out there onto the field. And when it doesn't go as you would like as a fan, the England fans are watching going, why are you dropping so many balls? Why is your cricket smartness not quite up with Australia? Because that is something that you can really teach quite quickly. In and around the dressing rooms, talking cricket all the time and understanding situations and, going through all the different scenario plays, fielding cricket smartness. and agility. These kind of things can be worked on very, very quickly if you have the right mindset, you have the right attitude, you have the right coaches driving you. I'm not just picking on Sophie Ecclestone, but Sophie Ecclestone to refuse an interview, who at the ECB is allowing her to do that? That's what I would say. Who in the management is saying to Sophie Ecclestone, oh, by the way, Sophie, you can refuse an interview? It's your job. That's your job to be out there talking to the media. That's what it is. It's not just talking to the media when you want to talk to the media. And refusing to talk to someone. I mean, Chappers, if the amount of criticism that we've given, men's players over the last 15 years, if I expose the amount that don't speak to me, it's a long list. But I think this is great for the game and the way that the women's game is moved on, because we are now talking about it, because we passionately want the England team to be up there with the standards of what Australia are. They are. I've been working with Elisa Healy over the last few weeks, and she is an incredible human being. A brilliant cricketer, but wow, what a person behind the scenes, and the way that she acts, the way that she trains, the way that she goes about her business. And she, for me, is the perfect role model. And England have got some wonderful role models as well. But these kind of tours are those line in the sand moments where, if you just put them to one side and go, we'll be better next side, or some of those Australians will retire. Now is the time to go, okay, what do we need to do to really make our women's team the standard of what Australia are now? Can we get better? Can we be even better than the Australians? That's what you should be looking to try and achieve. But it'll take a huge amount of honesty, a huge amount of reflection, and a huge amount of hard work.
I'm only going to do this because I said I'd do it at the start, because I want to do a good 10-12 minutes on the Big Bash. So I'm only going to do this, and this is how times have changed, because we've done 45 minutes on the women. I'm now going to say, either of you got anything to say about the men at this stage?
In the men's team, I'll tell you what, Chappers, I've been staggered that the T20 team, if you look at white ball cricket across the board over the last few years, I find it staggering that England don't have a left armour. And I find it remarkable that they've gone to India to try and blow them away with rockets. If you talk to any batters in the world, what would you like to face on Indian wickets? And by the way, there's not many places in the world that you'd say this, but 90 miles an hour coming onto the bat in India is lovely, because you can deflect the ball. And England again have gone with the same attack for tomorrow's game in Rajkot. I'm staggered that they're not playing another spinner in Rehan Ahmed. I really am. In the last game, they bowled 6 overs of spin. It got, I think, 2 for 28. The Rockets, Vilek Varma was just kind of flicking them into the stands. The game before, Abhishek Sharma, he was flicking them into the stands. The next T20 World Cup for the men is in India and Sri Lanka. And I can't see them winning it with all the Rockets. They're going to have to need a left armour, left arm spinner, and some variations in that bowling attack other than just the Rockets.
One thing for me, and maybe it's because I've been watching the women, then watch the men, and the issue against spin. So, like I was saying, the women were averaging 13. The men, you've got players like Liam Livingstone, who typically are great players of spin and haven't quite, managed. I don't think any of them really picked. I can't say it.
Chakravarti, but
Chakravarti. Let me get it out.
It's not easy picking a spinner in the smog.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. I was like, is it a challenge with just general spin? Because I've seen our players play in IPLs and stuff, or is it just more the conditions and the challenges they're coming straight off the plane? Is there a bigger issue for us with spin?
I would say yes. Again, if they want to be really honest with themselves, if you look at this England side, and this is in the Test arena as well, under Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, and also in white ball cricket, you look at the semi-final of the T20 World Cup in Guyana, it was spinning, and they came unstuck. So they do have an issue against the spinning ball, and it's only going to get that little bit more difficult because the next T20 World Cup, Champions Trophy as well in Pakistan, Dubai, everyone's going to bowl spin to England.
I think I'll take your word for it that the ball coming onto the bat at 90 miles an hour in India is lovely. I'm not sure.
Well, it's not lovely, but it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. It's not bad.
Yeah.
But by the way, it's not bad there. But I don't want it in Australia.
No.
And I can see this attack that England have in T20. You only have to go back to 2019 to kind of 20 when they played great white ball cricket, and before that, England had an attack that wasn't Test match cricket dominant really. And now with Brandon McCullum, obviously the white ball coach, he seems to be very, very consistent and loyal to his test bowlers. You look at Gus Atkinson, Brydon Cast, Jofra Archer, Mark Wood. By the way, give me those 4 in Australia in about 10 months' time. But in T20 cricket altogether, I'm not too sure.
The Hobart Hurricanes won their first men's title this morning. They thrashed Sydney Thunder by 7 wickets, mainly thanks to Mitch Owen, who scored 108 off just 42 balls. His 50 came off 15, I think, if memory serves me right. He actually spent part of last year playing in the Lancashire League with Norden Cricket Club. And Greg Tattersall, the cricket secretary of Norden, joins us now. Evening, Greg.
Good evening.
Have you got him signed up for next summer?
Unfortunately not, no.
Might cost you a few more quid.
You must have felt a real sense of pride this morning, didn't you?
Yeah, massively so. All the boys were up this morning on the WhatsApp, and everyone's followed the competition closely for the couple of months that it's been on, but extremely proud moments, definitely.
He's had a great tournament. What was he like when he came over?
Yeah, he kind of, that's the way he plays, to be honest. He was very aggressive with the bat. I think he scored just short of 900 runs for us. He missed the last month of the season. He had a T20 competition in Cayman Islands and then went back for pre-season training with Tasmania. But he scored 900 runs at an average of 42, but with a strike rate of 144 for the entire season. So yeah, he did like to get on with it, I think it's fair to say.
When you bring your overseas in, what are you wanting from them? Because it's, you know, I'm sure most people listening to us are involved in league cricket somewhere or other, but it's more, you want more from your pro, don't you, than just performing out in the middle?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a funny role. And Mitch came over, he was 22 at the time, and he'd never been over before. And it is a bit of a different role because obviously they're used to playing with 10 other professionals. And league cricket's quite different in that you're playing with 10 other amateurs. So the dynamic is very different, and what's expected from you, is very different. And I think with Mitch in the early season, he had a couple of quick fire 30-40s, and I had to sit down with him and I tried explaining, look, Mitch, we need you to bat a bit longer. We need you to bat some overs. And I think the next day in the first round of Lancashire Cup, he got 121 net out off 51 balls with 13 sixes. So he didn't listen to a word, which the lads love to remind me all the time. But yeah, no, he was. It was the way he was. He spoke about strike rate a lot, funnily, and it's something that he did talk about, and he did like to get on with it, and he hit an extremely, as you've seen, it's an extremely good ball. We play in quite a small ground up in Norden as well, so I said there's a couple of occasions where he's cost us a bit of money with replacing neighbours' windows, etc.
Hey, you mentioned money. The collections, do they still happen in the leagues where you get a 50 or a ton and you go around with the cap?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, right.
You often get a lot more money in the collections for an amateur. Some people are a bit grumpy and say that the pros are paid to do that. So you get a lot more collections if one of the amateurs get one. But yeah, it still does happen, yeah.
You're all right. So the big question is, Mitch, when he got his 50 or 100 and the collection went, did he put the dosh behind the bar?
He never got a choice because it never went to him. He goes directly behind the bar, so he didn't get a choice. But he would have done anyway. He was extremely generous bloke, and he loved the social side of the club as well. So yeah, he'd definitely done that either way.
Have you got your pro lined up for this summer yet? I mean, I'm joking.
No, we haven't actually. Oh. We were hanging on, but I think it's pretty clear Mitch isn't going to be available now. But yeah, we've actually got a meeting tomorrow, so we've got a few names in the fire, but we'll have to sort that out now.
Greg, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, Greg Tattersall, cricket secretary of Norden. Mitch Owen played for them last season. Michael, I mean, you said you've been out there, you've been covering it. It struck me. I've loved watching this tournament. There've been some really real standout moments. Probably the best catch I've ever seen in my life from Glenn Maxwell in this tournament as well. And watching today, and yet interestingly, it's felt very much more young Aussie pros in this tournament than necessarily big superstars. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they cut it down to just 5 home games per team, which was better for all the supporters. Primarily, a lot of the games are played in the school holidays. And I think the real big adage is when the Australian Test stars come and play, after the Test series. And cricket in Australia this last 2 months has been spectacular. In the Test series that happened with India, it was just incredible. So much drama, and that kind of just got everyone talking about the game. Viewership numbers were through the roof, and then the Big Bash came around, and then some of the games, I remember, I think I did about 10 games, and 9 of them went to the last over. It just happened that there was such a close contest pretty much happening every night, and that just gets everyone talking. There were so many great innings, so many, as you mentioned, Glenn Maxwell's catch. There was a brilliant catch from Ben Duckett. And you're right, it was really a tournament where the Australians took over. It was a lot of young Australians that came through, Mitch Owen being one of them. Then the Australian Test players went and played. Steve Smith played brilliantly, got an amazing 100. And then there was the odd overseas star that produced a bit of magic. James Vince got a tremendous 100 early on in the tournament, but it just got everyone talking. The crowds were massive, they really were, and the atmosphere was fantastic around just the game of cricket. And then there was the build-up, obviously, Ebbs, for the Women's Ashes, and from then it's all gone downhill.
So, well, not for the Aussies, they're living their best lives.
They are.
Yeah, just a quick question, Vorney, because you travel a fair bit for a lot of this cricket. Where does the number one franchise league sit for you at the moment? Where would you? IPL. Still.
The Indian Premier League's the best franchise league in the world. I mean, it has all the overseas stars. It has all the Indian, obviously, superstars as well. And the quality of cricket that you see there is exceptional. I think Pakistan has a wonderful tournament. The Big Bash, as Chap has mentioned, the Australians have really made it really competitive. At times, I don't think the bowling is of the real high standard. We've seen some incredible striking. Glenn Maxwell's played 2 or 3 of the most remarkable innings in this year's Big Bash. The ILT20 in Dubai, I don't watch a great deal of, but again, you're seeing a bit of quality. And I like the South Africa franchise model. I just think, with us with our vitality, last 100, there's some really good cricketers around. And one thing's for sure, if you were choosing to have a career in cricket, this is the era. Because there's plenty of leagues. I mean, he mentioned Mitch Owen couldn't play last year at the end because he was playing in the Cayman Islands. And by the way, there's the T10 League, and Chris Lynn works with us in Australia, and he was telling us about the T10 League. There's going to be a T10 League in Mykonos, Milan, and Belgium within the next 12 months. So it's a good era to be a cricketer.
There's going to be a T10 League in Mykonos.
Mykonos, yeah. I've already put my name down for commentary.
Yeah, I fancy that. If they were looking for, I'm ready.
That sounds an amazing thing to be able to cover, but it's not it's not sustainable.
No, absolutely not. And I'll be totally honest, Chappers. I've seen a lot of the T10 stuff around the world, and some of it is dubious. Yeah. And I'm just saying that from a very ex-pro that watches the game and thinks some of the things that I see in some of those leagues should not happen on a cricket field. I'll just leave it at that.
Right, we will leave it there, I think. Michael, thank you. Ebony, you've done it standing up again. It works.
Trying to get my steps in and stay high energy.
All the energy. And give me a prediction for the test.
I'm worried that it's going to be another Australian get stuck in, to be honest. Over a longer period, I think they're going to dominate. So not looking good. But yeah, thanks for having us again.
Am I going to be waking up with you on the sofa?
I'm not. I've got off the nocturnal hours. I wasn't eating for breakfast like potato and salmon like I was eating dinner. I was off. My hours were all over the gaff. I don't know where I was, but I'm not doing the test. But I will be watching.